In 2019, a remarkable journey began with a simple act of compassion, the adoption of a school in Luero. This act set the stage for a series of transformative events that would shape the path of philanthropy, humanitarianism, and social entrepreneurship for me. The Young Eye Foundation emerged dedicated to work in early childhood care and education, uplifting marginalized youth by expanding our scope of work to the Naguru Remand Home in 2021. In 2022, the dedication and impact of the foundation was celebrated as I was named the youngest winner of the prestigious Top 40 Under 40 award by Vision Group. This milestone served as a catalyst propelling me towards many opportunities in the future. The recognition did not stop there. The University of Waterloo acknowledged this work, featuring me on the Faculty of Science page. Opportunities followed suit as jobs poured in rapidly. The Waterloo Chronicle sought out my thoughts on combating racism and promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion. In 2022, a defining moment arrived when I joined the Canada Children's Hospital Foundation, a job that breathed a new purpose into my life. With the continued efforts and work, the impact that I had continued to resonate, earning me a featured spot in the University of Waterloo's President's Update, Global Futures magazine, and online publication in 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Young Guy International, a product of the Young Guy Initiative. I'm proudly affiliated with the Darren Bainey blog. Join us on this inspiring journey of creating impact, inspiring change, and spreading hope. In creating impact, inspiring change, and spreading hope in the world. Welcome everyone to the Young Guy International from wherever you're listening to this from. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to these conversations and discussions. The mission here is to create a socially connected world by driving deep into captivating stories, ideas, and experiences that shape our world, providing you with fresh perspectives and a renewed sense of curiosity. Whether you're a seasoned enthusiast or curious beginner, this podcast is for everyone who craves intellectual stimulation, aha moments, and thought-provoking discussions. Today with me, I have Agapi Gessesse. Welcome, Agapi.
Thanks for having me.
A bit of background about Agapi. Agapi is, first and foremost, a change maker, a powerful and influential one at that. She's a 5-time award-winning individual, and more notably, her YWCA Woman of Distinction Award. She currently is the Executive Director of CEE, the Center for Young Black Professionals in Canada, and the founder of the Zebu Consulting and Strategy Group. She speaks and writes on topics such as anti-racism, anti-Black racism, government relations, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, workforce development, and youth engagement. For over a decade, Agapi has worked to enhance the lives of marginalized youth through her work with Toronto Community Housing, United Way Greater Toronto, and as the Executive Director of POV Films. So welcome again, Agapi, and welcome to all our guests listening from wherever you are.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Agapi, to get straight into it, I like to ask the first question about the individual and tap into their identity and their culture that really drives forth their passions, desires, and the motivations to do the work that they do. And my first question is, as an advocate for young Black success in Canada, I believe you have a focal point that brings forth this passion. I was watching previously one of your speeches at the YWCA, and you mentioned that faith is at the core of what you do, but also family. And I would like to explore how your culture and identity have influenced your professional journey. How was your cultural background as an Ethiopian, East African as well, shape the way you approach your work and define your purpose?
Yeah, I think for most Black Canadians, I think our identity is so tied in our culture. I think particularly for most of us are first or second generation immigrants, and so we toe the line of like our back home, our parents, how we were raised in our household, and then like the realities of being Canadian and trying to assimilate to kind of that culture. And I very much hold true to my culture and my identity as an Ethiopian, but I also will be doing a disservice to myself to if I don't identify with the fact that I am in Canada in a place that is a foreign land to my parents and at one point myself, and understanding that I need to navigate differently, and the ways and thoughts and sometimes the mentality of our parents might not serve us as well here in the country as we try and kind of pave our way. And so I really hold true to my culture, but also understanding that in Canada, the Black identity, no matter where we're from, I'm a proud Ethiopian. But at the same time, when we're here in Canada, we really, as a community, need to look beyond that and identify with our Black identity. Obviously, we all have our own cultural communities, et cetera, but really understanding what ties us together. You know what I always say, when you're crossing the street, someone's not turning to my brother and saying, "Oh, look at that Ethiopian kid crossing the street." Like they are going to form assumptions and things about you based off of the color of your skin. And I think we serve ourselves really well to identify that as Africans, as people from the Caribbean, there are Black communities across the entire world, right? And so, we have Latina folks and Latin folks who are part of our community as well. And I think we serve ourselves really well to identify with our Black identity and see what brings us together and figure out how we can navigate together in this newer place that is also trying to find a place for us while we try and find a place for ourselves,
I know, I hear you. And that's an interesting answer because recently I was just reading somewhere that stated that Canada right now, there's 1 in 4 people are actually immigrants. So you can begin to see there's a bit of a trend that they're becoming comfortable with us as immigrants, but also as individuals that they see can help prosper the nation into the direction that they see fit. In your answer, you did mention how there's so many different groups that you've worked with, and that at the core of it all is, in as much as you are staying true to your heritage as an Ethiopian, in Canada, they would look beyond that and just identify, as a Black person. And so obviously, throughout your career, you have worked with so many, talented and brilliant minds in these different fields and in these different backgrounds, and leading, a trail of leadership in your wake. How have you been able to foster the culture of growth, and mentorship within the organizations that you lead? And how do you empower individuals such as myself, a young Black international student in Canada, to reach, our full potential? How do you find that thing that, gives people the feeling that, I'm empowered and I can do this, and regardless of my skin color, my background, I should be able to do this?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I appreciate that question. I always say I do this work for the people because I am the people, and I think that makes a huge difference because, and I share this very publicly, my mother passed away at a very young age. I lived in a single parent household. And so, navigating and trying to make my way and figure out like I very early was just so blessed with people who helped me along the way, but I did not get here without help, right? So I think for me, fostering a environment and a place where people can ask questions, they can fail forward, they can have somebody walk it out with them is so important, because myself as a young person, my mother passed away when I was 14. I was living on my own by the time I was 16. And simple things like knowing how to pay bills and like going and getting a job, like all of those things happened very suddenly. And the people who I thought were going to be around quickly dissipated into the abyss, right? And so I think no matter who you are, no matter who your circumstances, when you're a young person trying to find your way, whether you have easy, hard, whatever. What every young person is looking for is for an opportunity and for somebody to tell them where to go and how to get there. There's nobody that you ask in life unless, like, I don't know, they're a special case. If you ask them, if I were to give you all of the tools and all of the guidance on how to be successful, no one's going to be like, that'd be really nice, but no, thank you. Like, no one's going to say that, you know? And so I would say, if I were to give advice or really how I like to foster that, is an ability for people to exercise their leadership no matter where they are in their career, in their stage. If you're a student, you can exercise your leadership. You can get involved at your school. If you're in a workplace and you're at an entry level position, you can give suggestions. You can put up your hand. You can volunteer. You can join an employee network. Like, there's always an opportunity for you to stretch yourself and exercise your leadership. And also understand that you always have something to offer. And the last thing that I'll definitely say, and I dealt with this as a young person a lot, is thinking that my circumstance would define where I was going to go, or what my outcome would be, or what I could offer folks. And I would say, no matter what your situation is, whatever your lived experience is, you are always going to be able, that alone, minus your skin color, minus anything, like, that is what's going to give you a value proposition. Nobody has lived the life you've lived. No one has experienced the things that you've experienced.
Yeah.
And so using that as a strength and sharing it with people is what is going to cultivate your leadership and allow you to show up as yourself all the time, because that's what's going to help you find your passion. That's what's going to help you find your purpose and where you'll kind of sit in this world.
Wow, that's a really deep answer. And what I like about it, if you'll allow me to ask, at a young age, like you said, at 14, losing your mother, and now seeing the kind of work that you've done, and not allowing that circumstance to define you and to define your purpose, but sort of pulling the lessons out of it, pulling the different aspects from it to guide the work that you do. At this point in your life, working with so many young individuals, do you see yourself as a mother, or as someone who's just a mother to all these different people, or as someone who just serves as an inspiration to these people? Or do you find ways of bringing the two together? Because as much as we're young people, obviously we need to be guided, but we need to be nurtured, and mothers are naturally good at that. So, do you see yourself as either or do you think?
I'd like to say, like, a big sister, I'm still very young. But I also think that, like, no one person could ever be credited for anyone's success or failure in life, right? And so I'm just grateful to be a part of folks' journeys. I've seen so many brilliant young people go through the programs and the work that I've done over the last decade. And what I love to see, number one, I say, like, half of them are going to be my boss one day, like, hands down, for sure. So I'm just here trying to, like, get a piece of the pie once my time comes. But I do think that I do see myself as somebody who's just proud to be part of the journey with these young folks. And I'm constantly, it doesn't matter if somebody has maybe graduated a program, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago. Again, I think everyone can find a place in their leadership journey, and mentors and people who are there to help you along the way are not meant to be there until kingdom come, right? Like, sometimes it's only seasonal. And I think people also need to be okay with that sometimes people are here for a season to support you in that moment and get you to the next level. And sometimes people are there for longer. I'm just grateful to be a part of it. And anytime somebody, wants to reach out or reach back from however long, I'm always happy to do it. I'm happy to see it, because there's young people who have far surpassed anything that I could ever imagine for myself. So that's also really encouraging.
Yeah, and I'd like to attest to that is that I remember when Sherry did introduce us, you were not hesitant to listen to what I had to say and to want to connect earlier in the year. So thank you for that, and thank you for being someone that wants to see young people prosper, but also wants to be part of their journey. Because, like you said, you never know where they'll be. They might end up being your boss. at,
Completely.
at some point in
I
life.
gotta keep my life up to date. Yeah.
And there's something that you mentioned about leadership. At whatever stage you are in your life, you said that you should continue to harness the skill of leadership, refine the skill of leadership. And I want to talk about your role as the executive director at CEE, the Center for Young Black Professionals. As an organization, of course, there are definitely the things you as an individual are passionate about, but then there are also the goals, the visions, and the objectives that the organization needs to meet. So, my question would be, how do you balance the long-term vision and strategic goals of CEE with the immediate needs, and challenges that are faced by the marginalized youth that you serve?
Yeah. Well, this work, you have to be flexible. And I think anyone who's entering into a career, and particularly if you're at service of people, which I think every industry you're at service of people in some way, shape, or form. But flexibility and adaptability is so important, because if you're meeting the needs of particularly a population like Black youth that have consistently been told, opposite and things that are not true to who they are, you really have to be able to meet them where they're at. And so for me, I'm very lucky to have a board at C that really understands the need for adaptability and meeting the needs of young people. But also myself as a leader was very clear that that's what I was looking for in an organization, and a board to support that work, and understanding that if a young person needs us to go left and we're on our way right, that we need to make a U-turn immediately, and we need to be comfortable with that. And that there also has to be a level of calculated risk at hand, right? In order for us to meet the needs of young people, the needs of this economy change daily, right? But the needs of young people also change quite frequently. And so we need to be able to adapt to where they're at. If we're saying that we're meeting where people where they're at, but then we have like a finish line that we're not willing to go past, then we're not staying true to what we say that we're trying to do here. So for sure, we have a strategic goals, and most of those goals are broad enough. One of our goals is strengthening our programming to meet the needs of young people, and so that's a goal that allows us to do what needs to be done to get to the end outcome, right? And so I think when we're thinking about goals and strategic plans, which is like my jam, I love strategic plans. I think keeping them broad enough so that you're meeting the needs of young people. And so I personally haven't had to compromise that, particularly at C. We have always, the two co-founders of the organization, Shireen Ashman and Kofi Hope, really set the stage on that. Like, this organization was built from community in consultation with Black youth, asking them what it is that they need. And that will continue to be the center of our work, because without the young people, there is no us. Like, there's no existence of us, right? And so I haven't necessarily ever had to compromise the balance of that in any way, shape, or form. But I think adaptability is really important. And also listening, like active listening consistently, is going to get us where we need to be as a people. And it's going to get C where it needs to go. Because if we're not listening to our members, we're not listening to our staff, who are so vital in making sure that our programs run the way that they do and have the success rate that they have. If we're not listening, then we're not doing, right? And so I think those two things, adaptability, listening, all of those things are going to give us the recipe for kind of success in this.
And it's interesting, you said that in the work that you do, working with young people, if they're going left, you need to be able to adapt to going left despite the fact that you're going right. And you did mention a fact that as young people, our needs are constantly changing. What we want yesterday is going to be different from what we want tomorrow. And, my question would be, how does CEE, or how do you then prioritize what needs of which individual needs to be met at this specific time. Because, like I said, there's so many different young people that have so many different needs. But as an organization and as Agapi, how do you identify and say this is the one that we're going to prioritize and address despite the competing other needs?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think for me personally, one of the approaches that I've constantly always wanted to take was thinking back to myself as a young person and what I needed at that moment at its core, not the specifics, but at its core, right?
Right.
Like if I'm asking somebody, do you know someone that you can introduce me to for like, what's the premise of that, right? Like, is it the premise is really, I want to build my social capital so that when an opportunity arises, I can step into that. So I think one of the things that we do really well at CEE is we have a person-centered approach. So we have full-time social workers on staff that work with the young people one-on-one to figure out what it is that they need, right? And sometimes young people, even me as an adult, like I don't know what I don't know. And so I might be saying I want one thing, but one of the things around listening and having that one-on-one experience and not having a one size fits all is that you can sit with a young person and really hear what it is that underlined ask is. They might think, they want one thing, but maybe when you get to the root of it, you're like, oh, okay, well, it looks like you're looking for X, Y, and Z. One of the things that I often use as an example is the social workers work with a young person to see, like, okay, well, we ask a series of questions like, do you have young children? And if they're, for instance, in a sector where it's a lot of shift work, that's very difficult for somebody who has maybe young children because the hours are not necessarily a 9 to 5 where daycare's open. It creates a little bit more of a challenge. And so bringing that to their attention and then maybe gearing them in a way that is conducive to the lifestyle that they want to live. Some young people will say, well, I want to travel in my life. So these are all things that as you listen and as you ask and probe and get more information from young people, you're able to hear what it is the underlying premise is and be able to provide suggestions and have that open dialogue with them. It is not a one size fits all. Everyone needs to be looked at an individual basis and figure out what makes the most sense for them and their lifestyle and the desires that they have for themselves. Because often, particularly when we're talking about Black youth, people think, oh, well, if you're given an opportunity, you should just take whatever's in front of you and be happy because the unemployment rate is high anyways. But why are other people allowed to choose and we're not, right? And so we should be able to have someone who's going to take the time to ask the questions, figure out what makes the most sense, what we're actually passionate about. I would not be able to do my job the way that I do it if I didn't care or if I wasn't passionate or it wasn't my purpose. And so I want every young person to be able to show up at their job in a passion, purpose-driven way. And so I think that's how I would approach helping people find their way. It's not a one size fits all, but I also say it takes time and resources, and you can't skimp on either.
You can't skip one. It takes time, like you said. You need a lot of patience to be able to achieve and get to where you want to get to. I wanted to pivot and look at advice that you can give for a young, professional or a young individual like myself in the aspect of collaboration. Today, we see that many of us have an individualistic approach, to working or to achieving our goals. We are not looking into the factor and to the possibility of working with different individuals or collaboration. And I wanted to ask how you approach collaboration and coalition building with not only yourself but your organizations, and how you're able to create, sustainable impact in the communities you serve, and how that is something that you think young people can adapt to and want at the core of everything they do.
Yeah. Collaboration is so important. We cannot do anything alone. Like, as much as we want to pretend that that's the case, like, nobody reaches anywhere by doing everything on their own. Like, there's just no way. Of course, there's going to be a level of grit and things. And when you get to your destination, you're going to want to pat yourself on the back a little, for sure. But there's like 1,000 people that probably help you get to that particular point. And so collaboration, particularly in our community, is so important. And I always suggest that, I have been a part, and I continue to be a part of cohort programs and experiences. And the reason why cohort models, and that's what we do at CEE, is cohort models. The reason why those are so powerful is because those people are going to be your peers as you enter into your career. And so oftentimes we always are looking to for mentorship upwards, right? Like, you see someone that you think that's where you want to be one day, and you reach out to them and you're like, can you talk to me about, what you did to get there? And not necessarily looking to your peers as assets to get you to that place. And throughout my entire career, it hasn't been someone who's like 10 steps ahead of me that has helped me get to where I need to go. It's always been like my manager or my coworker or the people I've been in a cohort with who I can call and say, I have this project, let's all band together and figure this out. I think that there's an opportunity that we miss when we don't look to our right and to our left, and we're really just looking up. I think that there's also an opportunity to look right in front of you, like your immediate boss. Like maybe you want to be the CEO, but right now you have a supervisor in front of you. You know what I mean? That supervisor, there's something to learn from them, right? And I also would say, in any situation, I often think that when we're in workplaces, people often look at particularly young people oh, my boss is telling me what to do. But really starting to look at the people who you're reporting to as mentors. I cannot tell you, I always name her Nadia Gavaya. My first job at Toronto Community Housing, that woman taught me everything she knew. I would spend my day shadowing her and trying to learn everything that she knew. And then after work, I would go do my actual job, because that was an open door opportunity for me to learn something that I did not know. I can do a really wicked Excel spreadsheet now, but if I date back, it's from working under her, right? And so I also think that in this generation, we're also so fixated on status and position. And if I paid attention to that my entire career, I would be nowhere, literally. There have been so many instances where I might have been I was the frontline worker. I was supposed to be a youth mentor, and I would volunteer and put my hand up to do the administrative work of somebody who's making $30,000 or $40,000 more than me. But for me, it was about the opportunity to learn. And I'm not saying stay in that state forever, right?
Right.
Don't underpay yourself. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, in the situation that you're at now, look to the right, the left, look at your peers, look at your immediate supervision, and see what opportunity while I'm here, what can I learn to better and grow myself, rather than maybe being oh, I'm in this job I shouldn't be in. I deserve better. Instead of doing that, while you're here, what are you going to learn? While you're here, what social capital are you going to build? And the last thing that I'll say in a practical kind of sense is your network is going to be your net worth in so many ways. And so social capital is so important. It's even more important than the actual money you're making. And so wherever you actually are, your social capital is going to determine what your next pay is going to look like, And so one of my mentors when I was really young had me do this for probably 6 months. Every Friday, I did not have class, and I would meet. She would give me 2 people to meet with. I would meet with those 2 people. I would ask each of those 2 people to introduce me to 2 other people. And every Friday, I would have at least 2 people that I would meet with, because I would email maybe out of those 4 people, maybe 2 people would get back to me. I'd land that. Some people would get back to me later. I just kept a spreadsheet, and I did that for 6 months. And I just said, this is what I'm interested in, informational interviews. This is what I'm interested in. This is who, and that warm, because oftentimes, particularly in the Black community, maybe we can't go to our parents. I know I surely couldn't. I didn't have anyone to say, hey, introduce me to folks, but a mentor that I got through a program kind of opened that door to me, and I utilized it. And that's how over time, some of those people didn't remember me and then interacted with me years later. And it was like, oh, I know you. You know, we had interacted at that time. So really building your social capital, I think that's like a really practical way of doing it, is like when you meet with one person, ask them to, but also go with questions. Like, don't just waste people's time. Go with questions, try and understand the work that they're doing, particularly if you're trying to figure out your way.
Yeah, right. True. And that's a full circle answer, because we came from the bit of you can't go alone if you want to get somewhere. I mean, I think you know that quote of if you want to go far, go alone. But if you actually want to have an impact and go far, actually, you go together. And
Yeah.
I think from that, you then mentioned how success is something that doesn't just happen overnight. It takes time, and building your social capital is key to reaching where you want to go. And the key thing that you did mention is that nowadays, lots of young people, we're all looking for status, and we're all trying to be something.
I blame
And
Instagram.
we're all trying to be something that we're not. I'll give you a testimony. Last year, I did my first co-op at Waterloo International. I worked as an international relations analyst, one of the best jobs that I ever got. But
Awesome.
my second job, I worked at Canada's Children's Hospital Foundation. In
Okay.
terms of the pay, it was completely lower than my first, but I remember going into it thinking, I'm not going into this just for the money. I'm going into this to build my social capital, to learn how they do things so that I can apply what I've learned into the things that I was already doing. And coming out of it, I think the value that I gained from that entire experience, just working 4 months with them, is invaluable, because now there are things that I've learned, there are connections that I've built through that I would not have got if I decided to solely go for a job that was paying me an exuberant amount of money. And that's something that I think as young people we need to really focus on putting in the work, building our social capital, and learning from our mentors, because that is key to getting to where we want to go. From that, I wanted to ask a close and personal question directly to you. We've discussed all these different aspects of where you came from, what you learned, where you intend to go with the work that you're doing. How would you define success? Has your definition evolved over time? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think it definitely has. I mean, when I was younger and I like got my first, before I even entered into the sector, I was just like, I'm going to make money. I worked at the bank and I was like, I'm going to make money, and so I think over time it's been redefined for me. For me, it's about social impact. Like, when I'm entering into an organization, am I going to be able to leave something behind for the person that's going to come after me, that they can actually, that I can tangibly see there was a change. Not everyone is going to enter into social impact work, right? But everywhere you work, there's always going to be a social impact opportunity, right? And so even if you are working at the bank, what is your social impact going to be? Are you going to suggest places for your peers to volunteer? Are you going to create a atmosphere where people feel empowered and they can bring their entire self to the work? Like, for me, it's about, for everyone, your social impact is going to look different. For me, am I leaving a trail of leaders behind me that are going to go forth, be greater than me, be more awesome and more impactful?
True.
That's my level of success measurement is, and am I doing the best that I can do in where I'm at right now to be able to create that? I need to be able to see that for myself. And every organization that I'm in, am I able to look tangibly at things that I can look at and see, have I grown this place? Have I made it better? Have I been able to provide an asset for them to be able to leverage? Those things are really important to me, and that's how I measure my success, is how am I. And also, I don't have children, but when I do have children, am I going to be able to to show my children something that I could be proud of and outcomes that they would be proud of. Those are the types of things that I'm looking at, and I look at that in every aspect of my life. I look at that in a marriage. I look at that in how I'll plan to raise my children. Like everything is I'm a woman of faith, and so
True.
that's always an opportunity for me to exercise the God in me, right? And so, how am I going to be able to demonstrate what He's been able to do in my life? Is be able to leave a mark of Him, as I continue through my career. And so that's what measurement. That's what success looks like for me. I'm sure it will evolve over time. I also think as you get older, your personal life also starts to become a measure of your success. If you asked me a couple of years ago, I'd be like, work-life balance doesn't exist. I do what I love, and therefore, like, it's my life. I think that's evolved for me as well. I remember saying that at a conference, and everyone was like, and I was just like, what? So it definitely has evolved, but for me, it's about what social impact am I going to be able to leave behind that's measurable, that I can see, and that's tangible.
Understandable. Wow. And that's a question, and that's an answer actually that I think will resonate with so many different individuals. And because you're applying it in your life, for people like us who are watching your journey, it's inspiring because there's lots that we pick from that, and there's lots that we continue to exhibit through seeing the work that you do. And obviously, my last question to you, Agapi, would be because this is essentially for my peers, young people in university, just out of university, getting into university, what key qualities or habits do you believe are essential for young people to reaching their goals? You could name as many as 3 or as many as you want, but what are the key qualities or habits you think are essential for us?
I think consistency and resilience. Like, not everything is going to go your way, and I cannot tell you, I used to be that person that, like, if I was late to a meeting, I would be like, oh my gosh, these people think I'm incompetent. I was 2 minutes late. They must have noticed. And like, I think as young people, you get really wrapped up in that type of minutia.
True.
Things are not always going to go your way, and that is okay. But how are you going to kind of fail forward? How are you going to get up and think about how things are going to be done differently? So consistency, adaptability, for sure. Like, it is what it is. I cannot tell you how many times in my life I've had to reflect on, like, these are the cards that are dealt. Like, they might not be the best cards, but you have a choice to either like continue to play and like, or you fold. You try and bluff it out and like figure it out as you go along, or you fold. And like, no one likes somebody who folds. Then you lose. You're out of the game. And so, like, yeah, like, it's done. And so you don't want it to be over. You want it to be consistent. You want to continuously put your best foot forward, but also understand, like, life is not always going to go the way that you want it to. And that is okay. Like, I've never planned. People might see my career and think like I planned it meticulously, like, not even close. Like, I was just like, they're like, you want to do this? I'm like, sure, that sounds like fun. Like, and so I think and then the number one thing I'll say is follow your instincts. What, like, I think we like self-doubt so much, and we're like, this world is looking for like all types of ways to figure out like what to do next. And like, you 99% of the time know what it is that you need to do and how you need to do it. You just have to trust yourself. And confidence is something that you build over time. But whatever it is, you have it in you. Like, nobody is going to, like, we often ask our peers, our friends, if something happens, I'm guilty of it. Like, I'll call 10 people before, like, I actually think to myself, like, Agapi, what do you want to do here? And like, don't look to everyone else for an answer that you already have inside you. Like, that's a habit you need to start to like check in with yourself. Is this what I want to do? Is if you have a nudge, like, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Like, don't do it. Like, don't do it. And be comfortable exercising your leadership and saying, like, I'm not comfortable with this in this moment in time. Like, and that's okay. So I think failing forward, consistency, adaptability, and, I really have to say, Darren, I'm even commending you. I think also supporting each other. Like, you have this podcast. I'm calling your peers. I don't even know who they are, but your peers, like that they should be supporting and listening, support each other, because you're also only going to get what you give. uh,
True.
Period. Like you can't sit down and never go to anyone's events, or in your case probably like birthday parties, or whatever, and then expect your birthday party to come and like you're upset that nobody showed up. You're going to get what you give. And so you have to and do it with a pure heart and good intent, right? Not to have it back, but support each other. And don't feed into this, like, I don't know how to I don't even know what culture to describe it, but this Instagram culture that, like, you're looking at other people and you're envious and you're like, oh, I wish I had what they had. Nobody is putting a camera to their face when they're having a bad day crying and like there's
True.
$0 in their bank account. Nobody is flexing that on the gram, you know? So
That's
like
true.
also know that it's all a lie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like
That's true.
find your confidence in yourself to know and be like, what you can see in your tangible life and in your tangible friend's life is what reality is. And like don't look to the internet to like validate or invalidate anything that you're doing, because that's a
Yeah.
dangerous place to be.
Wow, Agapi, I know I said one last question, but
No problem.
I really think this is a yes or no. Do you think 14-year-old you would be proud of where you are now?
Yes, most definitely. Yeah.
That's all we wanted to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Agapi, for being part of the Young Guy International podcast. You're actually the first guest that I'm hosting.
Oh, I love it.
On this platform. There's so much that I've learned personally for me on my blogs and in the different work that I do in Uganda. I really try to have impact, but also through the work that I do, inspire those around me and those older than me, because I think, like you said, supporting people, you will get exactly what you give, and that's just the way of life. So thank you again, Agapi, for being a guest on the Young
Thank
Guy
you.
International. I really appreciate it, and I personally enjoyed this conversation.
So did I.
Um, and to our listeners and people watching, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I hope that you take Agapi's story, Agapi's answers, and the wisdom that she shared with us with positivity, and you apply it in your life. She did say 3 key things as young people we need to focus on. That is consistency, resilience, failing forward, and adaptability in this ever-changing world that we're in. So thank you again, Agapi.
Thank you. And shout out to Uganda.
Thank you. We're over and out. Thank you, everyone, for listening.